Okay, let's go.
Alright, I'm ready. Wait, hold on.
I've recorded.
Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Alright, here we go. Pottery. Purpose, size, shape, and color. These are the four things a potter has to think about as he looks at the amount of clay before he thinks about what he wants to do with it. Well, with this, I actually meant to create a cup, but I ended up using it more to hold my stationery. Who knew? Well, the story behind this cup, if you may, is quite a heartwarming one. It actually started out as a piece, well, a amount of clay, and slipped into the shiny piece of art that Miss Bird, the art teacher at Gilmore College for Girls, where I did my placement, helped me glaze many times over and put through the kiln, which is amazing. I started out my observations with the Year 9 class doing a unit of work on ceramics, and I eventually decided to follow along what they were doing. I was actually observing what Miss Bird and the students were doing with learning how to roll out the clay, how to use your wire tools and your rulers and that sort of stuff to get a nice shape, how to use a cardboard tube to roll your clay into a nice cylindrical form, how to cut it up. Also, so I had the basic shape of this cup, and I actually left it to dry. After a lesson or two, forgot about it, and then I came back and I realized that the class was on to painting their pieces. So I thought, you know what, I'll just follow along. So I just started painting it, left it out to dry again, and this time I forgot about it. And in my second block of placements, when I came back from a trip, Miss Bird came up to me and she went, "Hey Nick, I've got a present for you." And she goes, to a desk and comes back and ta-da! And I went, "Oh my God, that's the piece that I painted and you glazed it and put through the kiln. That's amazing!" So now I've got a nice little souvenir from Gilmore College. When I look at this cup, I can't help but think back on my journey as a learner and as a teacher since day dot of the course. Like this cup, it has the potential to be many things. It could be, it could hold water, it could hold stationery, like what I'm using it for. It could simply be a decorative ornament. This cup actually started out as an idea that, it'd be nice if I could make something out of this class, for my girlfriend, to give her on an anniversary. Well, I was actually quietly observing a class, but back then I was quite unsure about, I guess, my place as a student teacher in a new environment. Now, as a learner, I always strive to be open about taking things on board that would challenge the way how I operate out of default as a teacher. I learn best by observing and jotting down things on what I feel useful. Like, for example, I learned from Miss Bird, what?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah. I learned from Miss Bird herself how to be kind and nice in demeanor, but switch straight away to the desks there to students who were talking out of turn. So that was something that I had to practice, but I eventually picked that up. From the idea, it actually moved to me being bold enough to take a chunk of clay from the bulk clay cupboard and also mimic what the students were doing in terms of rolling it out, like I mentioned earlier, and painting it. Well, just like how the lump of clay was slowly taking its form in my hands throughout the classes, I like to learn by observing what works for people and trying that for myself, and also reflecting on what doesn't work for me in my practice. Well, thinking back, at times when I was reflecting on what went wrong in my practice, I found that it was very, very easy to sort of wallow in the pit of despair and just beat myself up. And I remember a great conversation I had with Mr. Walker, my mentor, about every day being a new day and not letting the past get to you. And I suppose that's one of the secrets on how to have longevity in your career. And mind you, his has spanned almost 3.5 decades. Well, the irony is that even as a teacher, I'm still learning new things about my pedagogy, about how to better manage a class, how to better teach students in their zone of proximal development, which we learned at classes in uni, and also what it means to be lit, which actually means amazing. I learned that to win a generation, you need to be able to speak the language of a generation. Well, like this cup, I chose to paint it with a smiley face, on the rim. It's a bright peachy color and green and blue sort of flags or blades of grass. I believe that teaching in the classroom is really an extension of yourself as a person. and I'm quite an energetic person, so and I always have a smile on my face when I walk into a classroom, no matter whether it's period 1 on a Monday or period 5 on a Friday. I always take control of that atmosphere and make sure that it's a lively one for learning. As a teacher, I engage my students with relevant videos, songs, and games that will incorporate what needs to be taught. And so far, these rather unorthodox approaches have paid off, with material in the class being retained. Well, I can remember an example, a math class actually, where I got students to sit in groups of 3 and 4, and I gave them some laminated cards that I made. So this lesson was actually about highest common factor. So some of these cards that I made look like this. So what is the greatest common factor of 18 and 12? So I actually group the cards by smaller groups. So if I had a group of 4, I'd give them 4 groups of A. So anyway, a student would have a mixture of these cards, and they went, the game is a variant of Snap, so they had to have a matching set of cards before they can go Snap. So I found out that, well, I was observing the games, that in the frenzy of trying to swap out your cards for the appropriate one, most if not all of them were reciting aloud or trying to do the math out loud. What is the highest common factor of these two numbers? So I thought that was pretty amazing that they managed to apply that in a game. Now, in a sense, because I elected to have a mix of old school activities such as practicing questions from math textbook and sort of new school activities like games, and also checking up on homework that I would assign, I could ensure that students understand the concepts that I would teach in class. And I also like to start each lesson by recapping what we have covered the lesson before, just so that everyone's on the same page. Most of the time we take a bit of time with the recaps, but with the weaker students it helps them, because they'll be going, what did you learn? And then I went, no, we did this and then and then they get it. So my lessons will always include time for me to roam around just to ask students whether they need any re-explanation while they're doing their work. And I always have my eye out on the weaker, usually more rowdier students, and I'll always make sure that they're on task with what they're doing. Now, I mentioned at the start that purpose, size, shape, and color are the 4 things that every potter needs to think about. Now, just like the potter, I understand that as a teacher, the purpose of me coming to a class with my lesson is to hopefully add to a student's knowledge base, and in the journey of learning, sort of help them find out what they're passionate about and to pursue that wholeheartedly. Now, this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love observing my students in other classes. So whether it's music classes, art classes, cooking classes, or theatre classes for that matter, just so that I can listen in on the conversations that they would have about what interests them and how I can use that as a hook in my lessons. I know that students learn best when they can connect the in-class concept with the real world, and it's an added bonus if that concept can be tied into something with pop culture. It works. And this is one of the reasons why I made an extra effort to sort of link each concept with something relevant in the world today. Now, I can remember a class where I was going to introduce the properties of metal. So it was for a Year 9 science class, and what made these metals useful. Now, if you think about the content of that lesson, it could very well be a very dry lesson. It could be, we talk about the malleability, the durability, how it could be, how it's conducting electricity, yada yada yada. It could be just listing out. But because music and stage production have been a big part of my life, I thought that I'd show them a quick video on the making of the insides of a One Direction concert. So while playing that video, I remember watching how the lighting and the rigging director would talk about all these truss systems and the stage and whatnot, and I would pause the video. Well, I actually did. I paused the video and I asked the students, what do you think is it about these truss systems that enable it to support the lighting rigs, the speaker arrays, and that sort of stuff? So I actually got the students to think about the properties of metals within the context of a One Direction concert. Well, looking to the future, just like how an expert hunter would lick his finger and point it in the direction of the wind to figure out where the wind is blowing, and then position himself sort of downwind to the prey, I would ideally have my finger on the pulse of pop culture and current events in the world today, so that my lessons can be relevant to the students. Now, whether or not there's an element of social justice in the world or something closer to home that the students can choose to make a difference in, once I get them to identify with a cause that is greater than themselves and help them establish the usefulness of what they are learning in the light of contributing perhaps to a solution to maybe one of the big problems out there, learning will then become rich and meaningful, and I guess to prepare them for the future. Whether in my math class, we look at issues solving the homeless housing crisis in Melbourne, or in a science class where we look at how to make houses out of aluminum cans, my teaching will be linked to what is happening in the world today and what society in the future might have to deal with. For now, just like this happy mug, schools in the future should keep things simple. Be a place that builds children up, empowers them to go after the things that they're passionate for, and ignites their destinies as they seek to become global citizens, playing a part in making the world a better place for future generations to come. That's all. Thank you.